The sound of the lock. Imagine a place where one mistake, one wrong glance, one misplaced word can cost you your life. Where time doesn't move forward. It circles back. Where the air smells like bleach, metal, and fear. They call it Redwood Correctional Facility, but to the men inside it's something else entirely. The cage. Somewhere deep inside, a single door slams. It's not just the sound of metal. It's the sound of a man disappearing from the world. Every year, hundreds enter these walls. Some guilty, some not. But once you're inside, truth doesn't matter anymore. Survival does. This is the story of one man who walked into the cage, and the deadly secret he uncovered before it swallowed him whole. The arrival? It was 6:47 a.m. when Elias Monroe stepped off the bus, ankle chains clinking, wrists cuffed, and eyes wide open. He wasn't like the others. He'd never been in trouble before, but that didn't matter now. Inside Redwood, your past doesn't define you. Your reputation does. And Elias? He had none. The guards barely looked at him as they led the new inmates down the concrete hallway. Strip, face the wall, hands up. The air was freezing. Cameras watched from every corner. This wasn't intake, it was initiation. When the cell door finally closed behind him, Elias realized something terrifying. The real punishment had just begun. The rule you don't break. There's an unwritten code in prison, and rule number 1, don't ask questions. Elias learned that fast. He asked a guard for a blanket. The next morning, his mattress was soaked in water and bleach. He didn't ask again. By the second week, he'd already seen 3 fights, 2 lockdowns, and 1 inmate disappear during shower time. Nobody talked about it. Nobody ever talked about anything. But one night, from his bunk, Elias heard something through the vents, a whisper, a voice repeating the same phrase. Over and over. They buried him under cell block D. That's when the story really began. The first death, 3 weeks in. Elias had stopped counting days. Inside Redwood, time wasn't a straight line. It was a loop of noise, tension, and the constant smell of rust. Every night, he'd lie awake, listening to the footsteps, guards pacing like wolves in armor. Every morning, the same breakfast, cold oatmeal and burnt toast that could cut your gums. But on the 22nd morning, something changed. The yard gate didn't open. The siren didn't sound. Instead, a single alarm echoed across the cell blocks. Short, sharp, final. From his barred window, Elias saw it. 2 guards dragging a body across the yard, a dark red trail behind them. The whispers began immediately. Someone from C block, stabbed in the showers. No cameras. That was the lie everyone accepted. Because at Redwood, the truth wasn't allowed to live. Later that night, Elias noticed something the others didn't. The janitor's cart parked outside C block was missing its mop, and the drain in the shower corridor, it was still bleeding. The whisper cell. They moved Elias to cell 208 2 days later. Officially, it was a routine reshuffle. Unofficially, it was a message. His new cellmate, a man named Jonas Hale, had eyes like polished glass and a smile that never reached them. Jonas had been inside 12 years for armed robbery, but everyone whispered he had done much worse. That night, as the lights flicked out, Jonas spoke for the first time. "You hear him yet?" he asked. Elias turned. Hear who? The ones in the walls. At first, Elias thought it was a joke, but then a sound, like static, faint but rhythmic. Tap, 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 3 taps, pause, 3 more. Morse code. Jonas whispered, "That's not ghosts, that's messages." From the cells beneath them, inmates were communicating through pipes, through vents, through the metal veins of Redwood itself. Each code carried rumors, warnings, secrets, and one message repeated more than any other. Section D, don't go near the drains. The hidden corridor, it started with a leak. The guard on night shift told Elias to mop the floor outside the utility room. "Since you're so clean," sarcasm laced every word. But while mopping, he noticed something strange. The vent near the floor was loose, and behind it, a narrow tunnel, old, unmarked, coated in dust. He waited until the lights out bell. When the halls went dark, he slipped back. He pried open the vent and crawled inside. The tunnel smelled of mold and rust. Rats scurried past his hands. After 10 feet, he reached a metal door, one that wasn't supposed to exist. Through the cracks, he saw it. A room lined with old stretchers, black plastic sheets, and bags tagged with inmate numbers. No cameras, no lights, only silence. And on the far wall, written in chalk, were 5 words that would haunt him for life. This place eats the living. The file that shouldn't exist. The next morning, Elias tried to act normal. He sat at breakfast, chewing slowly, eyes fixed on nothing. But Jonas noticed. "Something's changed," he muttered. Elias didn't respond. Later that day, while working in the mailroom, Elias found an envelope that didn't belong there. No return address, no recipient name, just a single word stamped on it, internal. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white, a man on a stretcher with a toe tag that read, Monroe E. Elias froze. It was his name, except he was still alive. The deal with the devil. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The photograph haunted him, the lifeless version of himself on that stretcher, toe-tagged and numbered like property. Was it a threat, a mistake, or a warning of what was coming? When the breakfast siren blared, Elias stayed still. He watched the guards make their rounds. Then one of them stopped, a tall man with a scar slicing down his cheek. His name tag read, Officer Larkin, Larkin Star. It had Elias, then quietly slipped something through the slot. A folded note. Elias opened it. "We need to talk. Laundry room. Midnight." By nightfall, the prison seemed to hold its breath. When Elias entered the laundry room, Larkin was waiting, cigarette in hand, smoke curling like secrets. "You've seen too much," Larkin said, his voice low. Elias stayed silent. Larkin leaned closer. "You want to live? Then you work for me now." "What kind of work?" Elias asked. Larkin smirked. "The kind that keeps the bodies from being found." That's when Elias realized something chilling. Larkin wasn't warning him. He was recruiting him. The job. The next night, Elias was escorted out of his cell without explanation. They handed him gloves, a mask, and a mop. His task, cleanup duty. Down in the restricted wing, the air was colder, thick with ammonia and something worse. Larkin unlocked a steel door, and Elias stepped into a small room with a drain in the center. On the floor, blood everywhere. No one spoke. The other inmates doing cleanup kept their eyes down, moving mechanically. Elias noticed something. Every single one of them wore old ID tags from inmates who were supposedly transferred out months ago. He finally understood. Redwood didn't transfer people. It recycled them. When the work was done, Larkin handed Elias a small envelope. "Keep your mouth shut," he said. Inside was a single cigarette and a pack of gum, a prisoner's currency, payment for silence. But Elias wasn't planning on staying silent. The inmate who vanished twice. There was one man who'd been here longer than anyone, Rico Vega. He'd done 15 years, most of them in isolation. Rumor had it, he once escaped for 12 hours before they caught him again. Elias found him during lunch, sitting alone, carving lines into his tray. "Why do they move people to Section D?" Elias asked. Vega didn't look up. "You don't move to D, you disappear to D." He leaned closer, whispering, "Those drains you're cleaning, they don't lead to the sewer. They lead under the yard, to the old wing they shut down after the riots." Elias froze. "The old wing?" Vega nodded. "Yeah, that's where they bury the mistakes." When Elias tried to ask more, Vega's hand clamped on his wrist. "Walk away, kid, or you'll end up cleaning yourself." The disappearing list. Elias spent the next week searching. Every shift, he memorized the inmate rosters, the transport logs, the medical lists. And every time he came back to check, the same names vanished overnight. Not deleted, erased. He smuggled one list into his cell, hiding it inside the spine of a Bible. 32 names, all marked with TR, transfer released. But Elias had spoken to 5 of them in the last month. They hadn't gone anywhere. That night, he opened the vent again. The tapping started. Jonas leaned in, translating the Morse code. "They're testing something," Elias whispered. "Testing what?" Jonas listened again, then his face went pale. "They're testing how long it takes to make a man disappear. The warning." The next morning, the guards pulled Elias from his cell without a word. They took him to the infirmary, a place no one wanted to go. A nurse in a white coat asked him to sit. Her hands trembled as she filled a syringe. Elias caught her eyes, pleading, terrified. "Please," he whispered, "tell me what's going on." She hesitated, then mouthed 3 words. "Don't trust Larkin." Before she could say more, the door opened and Larkin entered. The nurse went silent. Larkin smiled faintly. "Just routine blood work," he said. Elias felt the needle prick his arm, and everything began to blur. When he woke up, he was back in his cell. The clock said it was 2 days later, and on the wall, written in red marker, were 5 words that weren't there before. "They know you found it, the secret under Section D." Elias stopped sleeping. Every sound in the dark fell. It's like it was aimed at him. Every knock, every whisper through the pipes. Jonas tried to calm him, but Elias had already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He needed answers. That night, while the guards played poker in the break room, Elias slipped through the vent again, this time heading toward the restricted area Vega had mentioned, Section D. He crawled until his elbows bled. The air grew colder, heavier. Finally, the tunnel opened into a corridor sealed with a steel gate. The words, "Authorized personnel only," were rusted and faded. He pushed through and found stairs. Leading down. The smell hit him first, chemical and decay. At the bottom, a massive underground chamber stretched out beneath the prison. Tanks, tables, surgical tools, cameras. On one of the walls, buttons of photographs were pinned, all mugshots. Some he recognized, inmates who'd transferred. And beside each photo, a black tag marked with the letters EXR. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he knew one thing. This wasn't a prison anymore. It was an experiment. The surveillance room. Elias moved quietly, hiding behind a row of file cabinets. Through a cracked door, he saw the surveillance room. Rows of monitors showing live feeds, not of the current blocks, but past inmates. Footage labeled with dates from years ago. Some videos were slowed down, analyzing movement, expressions, fear. It was like watching rats in a maze. He reached for a file marked Project Echo. Inside were pages of medical reports, test subjects, dosage trials, behavioral changes, and stamped across each page, property of Redwood Research Division. Elias froze. This wasn't just corruption, it was government-sanctioned. The door behind him creaked. He turned and came face to face with Officer Larkin. "You were supposed to keep your head down," Larkin said, stepping closer. Elias's hand shook, still clutching the file. "What is this place?" he demanded. Larkin smiled coldly. "It's where we turn killers into data." He raised his baton. Elias ran. The escape attempt. The alarms erupted. Red lights flared across the corridors. Elias sprinted through the tunnels, clutching the Project Echo file to his chest. His only thought, get out. He crawled through a maintenance shaft and burst into the yard, floodlights slicing through the fog. Guards shouted, dogs barked. A voice over the intercom thundered, "Lock down! Code black!" He ran for the fence, barbed wire glinting like teeth in the dark. He was 20 feet away when he heard the gunfire. The bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Larkin's boots echoed behind him. "Run all you want," Larkin called. "There's no outside. Redwood is the world." Elias crawled forward, bleeding, clutching the file. Just before he blacked out, he saw something impossible, a faint beam of light through the trees beyond the wall. Freedom, so close it hurt to look at. Then, darkness. The cell that changed. When Elias woke, he was in a different cell. No window, no light, just a single camera blinking in the corner. A voice crackled through the intercom. "You've caused quite the mess, Mr. Monroe." It wasn't Larkin. It was a new voice, calm, educated, almost polite. "I'm Dr. Marin," the voice said. "I run operations here. You found our lab. That's inconvenient." Elias tried to move, but felt an IV line taped to his arm. "Why me?" he whispered. Marin sighed. "Because your record was clean. We needed contrast, to see how long an innocent man takes to break." The speaker clicked off. The lights flickered on, and Elias saw it. A mirror on the opposite wall. Behind it, shadows moved. They were watching. The red tape. Days passed, maybe weeks. Every morning the door slid open and they took him to tests, Electrodes on his temples, flashing lights, questions about morality, pain, loyalty. Sometimes they'd show him footage, riots, confessions, executions, and measure his reactions. Other times, they'd inject something clear and cold, then record how long before he screamed. But the worst was the silence. When they'd leave him alone in a white room for hours, no sound, no motion, just his own heartbeat, and the faint hum of the hidden camera, he started to talk to himself. He started to answer. And somewhere in the corner of his mind, a voice whispered, "Maybe they're right about you." Jonas's return. Then, one day, he saw a familiar face. Jonas. Dragged down the hallway by guards, bleeding but grinning, they threw him into Elias's cell. "I told you, didn't I?" Jonas coughed, laughing through the pain. "They don't bury the dead here. They study him." Elias tried to tend to his wounds, but Jonas pushed his hand away. "There's still a way out," he said weakly. "Old sewage tunnels under D Block lead straight to the woods." Elias's eyes widened. "How do you know?" Jonas smirked. "Because I built them, back when I worked maintenance." He handed Elias a small object, a bent spoon sharpened to a point. "Last favor, kid, don't waste it." That night, Jonas stopped breathing. Elias didn't cry, he just whispered, "I won't." The tunnel to hell. Elias waited until lights out. He'd memorized every sound, the guards' boots, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, even the timing of the surveillance camera's pan. He knew he had exactly 12 seconds between rotations. He pried open the vent using the sharpened spoon Jonas had given him. Metal groaned softly. Behind it, darkness. He crawled, slow and silent. The air was colder than before. He could hear water dripping somewhere deep ahead. After what felt like an hour, he reached a stone passage, narrow and slick. The walls were covered in handprints, old and black with mold. As he pressed forward, the air shifted, heavier, fouler. Then he saw it, a pile of discarded uniforms, stained and torn, boots, ID tags, hundreds of them. He realized this wasn't a tunnel for escape. It was a graveyard. And just beyond the mound, a ladder rose toward a faint light. He climbed. At the top, he pushed open a rusted hatch and froze. He wasn't outside. He was standing beneath the execution chamber. The chamber of truth. Rows of empty chairs surrounded the single gurney. The walls were lined with cameras. Above him, a speaker crackled to life. "Mr. Monroe," said Dr. Marin's calm voice, "I see you found our exit." Elias turned toward the sound. "What are you doing here?" he shouted. "Why are you killing these people?" "Not killing," Marin replied. "Collecting data, behavior, responses. This place isn't about punishment. It's about prediction. How much pressure does it take before a man betrays his own humanity? You're monsters," Elias spat. Marin chuckled. "Perhaps, but monsters don't build systems. Humans do." Then a steel door opened behind him. Officer Larkin stepped in, baton in hand. "Time to finish your test." Elias grabbed a loose metal pipe and swung. The fight was brutal, desperation against authority. He hit Larkin across the face, once, twice, until the man dropped. Elias stood trembling, staring at his bloodied hands. He'd crossed the line Redwood wanted him to cross. The broadcast. In the corner of the room was an old control terminal. Rows of switches, marked yard feed, cell cams, admin line. Elias remembered the files he'd seen, the research, the torture, the Project Echo label. He flicked the switch labeled main feed. All across Redwood, monitors lit up. Guards froze. Inmates stopped mid-step. The live broadcast showed everything. The underground labs, the mutilated bodies, the hidden cameras, the files stamped Experimental Ethics Division. For the first time, the truth was out. Sirens screamed. The prison erupted in chaos. Doors opened, alarms blared, guards scrambled to shut down the system. But it was too late. Every monitor across the state prison network had already received in the transmission. The collapse. Smoke filled the halls. Somewhere deep in the facility, a fire had started. Maybe sabotage, maybe rage. Elias ran through corridors of red light and confusion. Bodies moved in every direction. Inmates, guards, chaos blending into one blur of survival. He reached the outer gate. Beyond it, he could see the tree line, the faint, unreachable glow of freedom. He stumbled toward it, coughing, bleeding, burning. Then a gunshot cracked the air. He fell. Larkin, face bandaged, blood seeping through gauze, stood behind him, weapon raised. "You think you exposed us?" he sneered. "This place isn't going anywhere. They'll build another. They always do." Elias smiled weakly. "Maybe not. This time." He pulled something from his pocket, a flash drive labeled Echo Backup. Larkin froze. Elias whispered, "It's already out." Then, another shot. The report. Weeks later, Redwood Correctional Facility burned to the ground. The official report called it an internal electrical fire. 37 inmates dead. No survivors listed. But someone leaked the footage online. Untraceable, anonymous. Clips showing medical experiments, falsified transfers, and security officers complicit in cover-ups. The video ended with a single image. A photograph of a man on a stretcher with a toe tag labeled Monroe E. And below it, words scrawled in red. He never left. But neither did his truth. The legacy. Months later, whispers spread through the system. Every guard, every warden, every official who'd ever touched Project Echo began to vanish. Some resigned, some disappeared. Others were found with files missing from their safes. And in the dark corners of the internet, a new name appeared. Echo 2.0. A digital crusade exposing hidden prisons, one leak at a time. Some said it was activists, some said it was Elias himself, alive, hiding in plain sight. To those who truly knew Redwood, they say something else, that a man who walked into hell found a way to turn its screams into signal. And that signal is still out there, waiting to be heard. Scene 5, The Whisper Cell. Imagine a place where one mistake can cost your life, and then realize that place still exists. Behind concrete walls, in shadows the world refuses to look into, men like Elias Monroe vanish. Not because they're guilty, but because someone needed them to disappear. They say prison changes a man, but places like Redwood don't just change you, they consume you. Your name, your memories, your humanity. Until all that's left is silence, and the sound of a lock clicking shut. Maybe that's why some stories are never meant to be told. Because when you open the wrong door, the truth doesn't set you free, it follows you. So the next time you hear a cell close, ask yourself, what's really being kept inside, and what's being buried with it?